Hi there. Welcome to my second, what will be my second, will be my not. We're gonna have a second commentating and a commentating what happened over the weekend in the royal wedding, well, correct, in the royal Nazi wedding, and I just want to briefly have a commentating for 5 minutes, and then for 10, 15 minutes, I'll just have a brief dialogue with you with the foundation of what I'm going to do. Those dialogues is just talk about briefly in that 10 15 minute dialogue as to why we need to approach this problem not from any ideological, religious or conclusion or philosophical point of view, but looking at it from fresh eyes and seeing the misery and the corruption and the evil that's happening in the world, because at the end of the day, this world is something that we have created by us and by ourselves and our ancestors from the past. And to understanding ourselves and having deep relationship within knowing who we are, then we can understand how to have relationships with other people and talk to people and actually find a way to live in the misery and the chaos that's in this world at the moment. I just want to give a 3 minute commentating about what happened in the royal Nazi wedding. It just completely this country has really just turned into a police state, and I think the vast majority of people just don't realise that we've got millions of cameras everywhere. They barely solve maybe 5 to 10% of crime, and that's been done by studies that show that do not solve much crime at all, to be honest. And it's just that when you need the cameras to actually work, when you need it to work, it doesn't work for some reason. For example, the July 7th attack, it never actually worked. And all the cameras that you can see, it never actually worked, and are not going to be released to the public. Now, what happened in the royal Nazi wedding it was a complete lockdown, a police state lockdown. Now, you can say, this perfect illustrates that the royal family is still very powerful people. And these people are there because we are subservient, we are submissive, we have no sense of moral compass within ourselves, so we like to project it onto other people, such as the royal family, because the royal family, if you look through their ancestors and their heritage, it's just basically a foundation of killing people. So there's a structure in society where our society is structured where psychopaths run our world, and that's just the economy of society. The people that are the most ruthless, the most successful, these people are they're caught up in ambition and power and greed and suffering, and they just cannot see what the implications is in causing the misery they're causing in the world. But we let them into our lives and submit to them. No one forced, those millions of people, or those 2 billion people that are watching TV to force them to watch it. They watched it in their own complicity and their own submissiveness. And all the millions of people in Trafalgar Square and all around the wedding route that actually watched the wedding, they were waving their flags. And it's, anyone that wanted to protest on that day, to voice the objection, not to the people getting married, but to the general issue of the morality of why this country is going down the drain, and basically a lot of our taxpayers' money has gone to a wedding that is just a big massive escape from ourselves. Now, I'm not blaming the wedding because there's millions of escapes that you can actually achieve through organised religions, through TV shows like Britain Got Talent, football, career. There's a million and one escapes that you can escape from yourself, but this is one big massive PR stunt to actually say the British royal family is wonderful, be good peasants and submit to them. Now, there was a big police state, as I said, a big police state lockdown, and people were literally about 100 activists that didn't actually commit any crimes, but just were going to be suspected of to be there in the wedding to disrupt it, were actually all arrested on the condition that it was just basically Minority Reported. So if you watch the movie Minority Report, they actually arrest people before they commit a crime, which is really really just predictive programming, and predictive programs basically when you watch films and actually can predict what's going to happen in the future. A good example would be 1984 in Brave New World. Well, our world is actually descending that. We're getting conditioned and programmed for that dystopian world of 1984 and Brave New World. It's just this country is a mix between boots in the ground dictatorship from 1984 and people being subservient and people just wanting talking about nonsense all the time and just brainwashed and conditioned and fragmented to not actually see what's really happening in the world. And I got with in terms of the police, the police in this country and the soldiers, it's a concept called, I say, they are just cogs in the machine. They do not think anymore. They lose their critical thinking. They submit to the machine and they let other people do the thinking for them. Now, it's just not just the police and army. I'm just badgering on. This is maybe the vast majority of society. It all starts from obviously the school system. You're told to be a good little slave then, and you're a good little consumer there. And then you're more programmed from secondary school to college and to the university until PhD. So when you reach PhD, you're not really smart. You just know how to regurgitate a lot of information, and you're just a prisoner of the left brain. And you just, if there's no critical thinking whatsoever in terms of school, you're not teaching anything to be a holistic, whole human being, how to deal with real issues in our life. In terms of what actually happened, because I was actually there, a few of friends of mine that was actually there got stopped and searched under Section 60 of whatever act it is, but there was no justification caused because this was basically about 4 or 5 hours. It was about 3 or 4 hours after the wedding was finished, and we were just there to check out the atmosphere. And it was a very from an observational point of view, it was very zombified. There's just a lot of people just being programmed and just being good and obedient people, just waving their flag, not realizing the implication of waving the flag, because it's just a gang symbol to me. When I look at the UK flag, all the it's just not just Great Britain, but all the nationalism around the world. It's just complete nonsense. You trace back all the major countries in the world, USA, England, as I said in my last talk. It's all forming the foundation of violence and misery and chaos of, people around the world. And, indigenous people and people getting, at the moment with the wars in, Iraq, Libya and Afghanistan, there's complete chaos within ourselves. And it's very important to actually realize how, conditioned we are. Now, just to go back to my story, what happened, they got stopped under Section 16 and they actually got searched for no apparent reason. Obviously, they didn't look suspicious. They were just random stop and search, just to, they were harmless. They were just going to Trafalgar Square to check out what the atmosphere was like and what it was like. There was no reason for the police to actually stop and search. So there's been studies done that about 99% of all stop and searches do not lead to anything, lead to any arrest or even suspecting of terrorists. And it's been done by various mainstream newspapers to actually clarify that stop and search is not there to find terrorists. It's just there to basically find, to create a fascist police state. And we, as human beings, we're implicit in that because we submit to that. We submit that to our taxpayers' money and our fragmentation and the violence and the confusion with ourselves. We're not able to deal with it, so you're confused. You don't know what's happening in the world. You're lost, so you need external authority. External authority, in most cases, will be your organised religion or your TV channels. Be Sky News or BBC News and all the mainstream media, mainstream newspapers, the Daily Mail, Daily Telegraph, The Guardian, Independent, to do your thinking for you. You cannot independently think for yourself, so you need to go to all these newspaper sources to find your news, which most of the time is very narrow-minded. It doesn't tell a complete story of what's really happening in the world. When you actually look within yourself, how conditioned you are psychologically, obviously that's why there's a lot of misery. And what this YouTube, what this dialogue is, what is this commentating all about and dialogue about as well, is to actually realise the fragmentation and the, sorrow and the anger, which I will go through much more in detail in the future in future dialogues. But after, I'm going to keep going on about the story. After they got searched, obviously they did not consent to their name, which is very important, which I'll go through in another time. Why they didn't give their name? They did get searched. Nothing was found. Anonymous, nothing was found, and it was all normal. It was just there as a police crackdown, obviously. And the second bit was just the EDL people afterwards, which was very pernicious to me because they were just they're very nationalistic. These EDL people, and they cannot see when you go to EDL March and see how these people think. It's not very. They've got a very narrow way of looking at the world. It's very black and white. Islam's evil. Israel is a wonderful country that doesn't commit war crimes and misery for the Palestinian people. And they just cannot see. They're just basically football hooligans that are not very well educated and just brainwashed into their mates to just start a fight with people that are not in their that do not support their ideology. In terms of that day, it was just a complete cesspool orgy of nationalism and worship of hierarchy of authority. And why do we let these why do we submit to these psychopathic people? It's a mimic of society, because when you actually work, for most people, when they get the job, they want to actually reach the top and make as much money as they can. And to do that, there's an implication of you that you have to spend about 70-80% of your time and your psychological energy on your job. And that, is actually worth all the money as well. And all that fighting in the politics and backstabbing to actually reach the top of your business. When you reach the top of the business, you're just basically a clinical psychopath. Because it's not there. When you look at CEOs and major corporations and companies, they're not the most enlightened people in the world. They're basically psychopaths, and they're the most ruthless and cruel people. They'll do anything whatsoever to become successful, even though it doesn't matter about the suffering of other people across the world, of other people. That's why we're so disconnected. We do not have any sensitivity. We've lost our sensitivity of the people that are suffering around the world. People from Africa, people starving to death around the world, and people that are suffering all around the world. We've lost our sensitivity, and people don't realise the implication. For example, I was looking at a Guardian newspaper online article today about the Chinese slave workers that are making the iPad and iPhone. They're killing themselves so much. They get paid a little. They have to work about 70, 80 hours a week, and and a lot of people, or some people, have been committing suicide because the condition is completely horrific. And people need to understand that we are complicit in that, because we buy, not just Apple Mac crap, but just other things like, our mobile phones, for example. Our mobile phones is funding the war in Africa, funding the war in the Congo, and to be, in the clothes as well. So our foundation, we don't realise that when you, answering our phones, or, using our computers, or, wearing our clothes and our mobile phones, where this is all coming from. Our foundation of our society is very corrupted, and we don't care. We are very indifferent to it. We just care about getting smashed and drinking and me and others escapes